everyone. This is Realtor Pamela Lewis, broker of Realty Executives Peninsula and team lead for Team McKinney. Hey, you came back and checked me out. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. But if this is your very first time checking out my channel, I appreciate you. So, this episode is the final episode that I'm doing for the rental series. So this episode is all about the top 5 things that you should do when you're renting a home. All right, wait for it. Up next. Hey, real quick, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Realtor Pamela Lewis. Every Friday, I'll come out with new videos that help you on your path of home shopping. Either it's renting, buying, selling, or even renting out your home. Come back and check out my channel. I'm going to give you some good tips. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. All right, let's get into it. All right, so we're ready for this week's episode. The top 5 things that you should do when you are renting a home. All right, let's do it. My number 1 tip when you're renting a home, super important. I think all 5 of them are super important, but this number 1 is super important because you're going to forget. Number 1 tip, mark your calendar. You're probably thinking, Realtor Pamela Lewis, mark my calendar for what? You have a couple things you need to mark your calendar for. One is put a reminder to yourself every year when your lease ends. Also put a reminder when it's your renewal time period. Every lease typically will have a time period that you can give notice to the owner that you're not going to renew. You could also give the owner notice if you wanted to change any of the terms of your lease. Did you have a pet when you moved in? Maybe you don't have a pet now and maybe you're requesting a pet. Maybe you want to ask the owner to reduce the rent. Aha, bright idea, right? You probably never thought about that, but you could ask. Maybe you paid for the last 2-3 years on time, and maybe you're asking the owner to give you a reduction in rent. Never hurts to ask, but check your lease and find out when is the renewal time period. Typically, your renewal time period is roughly between 30 and 60 days, just depending on what your lease says. And then usually you add on an additional 15 days to that to give a time period for notification of any change to the lease. But make sure you do look at your lease to figure out what your time periods are. So make sure you mark your calendar for whatever date in the future your lease is going to end and your renewal time period. So when it's time for you to move, you'll have it all in your calendars. All right. Okay, the second tip, record and file. So what do you mean, Realtor Pamela Lewis? What is this record and file? So when you move into the property, you usually will have 5 days, at least in the Commonwealth of Virginia, you'll have 5 days to report any deficiencies with the property. So when you move in, you want to test drive it. Check all the faucets, check all the showers, check the flooring, check the dishwasher, check all the appliances that you're renting with the property and make sure they're operating. Record any dings in the wall, any carpet that has any stains on it. Make sure you record, but also take a picture. Make sure you save your pictures in a cloud-based file versus just on your computer, because you never know when your computer is going to go out. And don't just save it on your phone, because you never know when your phone is going to go out, unless of course you save all your photos on the cloud. All right, the third tip for you when you're renting a home, maintain the property, people. All right, so what do I mean by that? Yes, it's not your home, but it is your home, right? Because you are living in a home for whatever time period, whether it be 6 months, a year, 5 or 10 years. Maintain the home. A couple of tips that I have for you is every year, also too, this would be part of your marking your calendar. Every year, make sure you're getting the carpets clean. That helps preserve the carpets and let the carpets last longer time period. Make sure you're getting the fireplace checked and cleaned out on a yearly basis. Make sure you're getting the dryer vent cleaned out. Now check your lease, because some landlords and some owners will clean the dryer vents for you. So see if you're responsible for that. But most leases you are responsible for that. Landscaping. It's springtime and summertime. Make sure you're de-weeding the flower beds. Make sure you're keeping the grass cut. Usually in the summertime, you can go maybe about 2 weeks, but sometimes when it gets in the hot time of the summertime, you need to be mowing the grass at least on a weekly basis. If you're busy, arrange for someone else to do that for you. I would hate for a landlord or a property manager to ride by and ding you with a letter saying you're not maintaining the yard just because you got busy. Make sure you're changing the air filters on a monthly basis. Whenever your rent's due, they tell us when you buy a house, hey, make sure you remind yourself when you pay your mortgage is to change your air filters. I tell my tenants that on the same thing when they pay rent. If you pay your rent on the first of the month, change your air filters also. It makes it easier for you to remember. Also, when you get your ding that your lease is renewing, make sure you change the batteries and the smoke detectors. You're supposed to change your smoke detectors batteries at least once a year, but it's also great to do that when you shift each season. So make a choice, whether you're going to do it a yearly basis or every season. Just make sure you do change those batteries in your smoke detectors, because oh my god, they get so loud when your battery dies, and you would hate to have that done in the middle of the night. And heaven forbid you have a hardwire smoke detector. That's the worst, because you never can figure out which smoke detector is actually going off, and it takes some time for you to actually figure that out. So get ahead of the game and check that out. All right. Also, with maintaining the property, make sure you report any repairs. Whether big or small, you always want to let your property manager know so they can let the landlord know. Or if you're not using a property manager and you're just using the owner, make sure you report items big or small. You want to make sure you do that so when it's time for you to leave out of that property, they're not looking at you cross-eyed like, did this really break or did you break it? So you want to make sure you report it. A lot of times, I know some people just hate to hear from tenants that are just reporting everything all the time, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry. You don't want to have later on that an owner or a property manager think that you're not maintaining the property when I know you are. That's the reason why you're listening to this video, because you care. Number 4, the 4th tip, insure your goods. Get renter's insurance. So you move into the property, you may forget that, hey, you got car insurance in case something happens, heaven forbid. But what about if something happens to you at your property? What if there ends up being a flood? So make sure if you do have renter's insurance that you are covered if you have rising water. You know, we've had a couple bad storms in Hampton Roads, and I think a couple areas got caught out there with, they had flood insurance, but renters policies don't always have rising water insurance. So you want to make sure that's covered if you think that you possibly could have rising water, especially if you're near like a lake close to the neighborhood. That might be a good idea to have rising water insurance. So what if you end up having a fire? Oh, I hope you don't. But what if you end up having roof damage? So the homeowner's insurance, and you have to listen to this because I've had a few tenants who just do not understand this. The owner's renter's policy is going to cover the home and correcting the home to make sure it's back in its same order. A homeowner's insurance policy is not going to cover your TV, your couches, your computers. It won't cover any of your personal goods. It's up to you, renter, to make sure you insure your goods just in case something happens. And heaven forbid, hopefully no one ever breaks into your property, but in the event that someone does, at least you have insurance to cover yourself and you're not looking at the homeowner to cover your goods. Because I would hate for your face to be pressed when you call it up and say, hey, somebody broke in, the owner's going to have to cover it, and you'll find out the owner's coverage does not cover that for you. The 5th tip for you, if you're renting a home, this is the biggest tip ever. If you're renting a home, make sure you listen to me closely. Save, save, save. You want to make sure you save your money. Is it okay to rent for 10 years? Oh yeah, it's your life. You can rent for 15 or 20 years. But, Mr. and Mrs. Renter, know this. An average mortgage is about 30 years. So, Remember, when you're paying rent for somebody else, you're paying their mortgage. And there's nothing wrong with it. You know, if you've heard my other videos, I believe owning a home and renting a home, it depends on your season. Everybody has reasons for the things that they do. But I do know this. Renting may not be the end-all be-all in your life. At some point, you are going to want to own a home, right? Well, if you do, save. Just save some money, because you're going to need down payment. Possibly you could get down payment assistance program, but maybe you don't qualify. You might make too much money. You're going to need closing costs. Depending on the market, the seller may not be paying closing costs, so you'll need roughly 3 to 4% of the purchase price. So save. Just put a little money here and there, maybe even 10% of what you're paying in rent. Put that to the side, so at least by the end of the year you'll have a whole mortgage payment set. And also too, when you go to buy a house, they're going to look to see that you at least have 3 months of reserves, 3 months of mortgage payment, which will be your reserves, on hand. So go ahead and save, because it may take you 3 years to go ahead and save that. Alright guys, that was the top 5 tips for you to know when you're renting a home. I hope this video helped you out so you can be a better steward of renting someone else's home. So one day when you own a home and you decide to move out and you decide to call Team McKinney and to get your home rented out, that we can continue on with having as great as a renter as you were to somebody else's home. So make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. And I hope you guys have a great day. And that's a wrap to our series for renting a home. Don't forget to subscribe.